Okay, so you want to write a killer essay.
Well, you've come to the right place.
We're going deep today on what makes an essay really shine, especially if you're thinking about the Eichen test.
But honestly, this stuff is useful for anyone who wants to write better, period.
Right, it's all about expressing yourself clearly and persuasively, no matter what you're writing.
Absolutely.
So to guide us, we've got some gold from the Eichen Foundation themselves. Their actual guidelines on how they evaluate those essays.
Plus, we've got some awesome advice from an educator, goes by Tora-Chan, on some power verbs that can really make your introductions pop.
So think of this as your master class on essay writing, from the folks who know it best.
Exactly. We're going to break it all down step by step.
All right, let's start with the Eichen folks.
Yeah.
What do they say are the big things they're looking for in a good essay?
Okay, so they break it down into 4 main areas.
Okay.
The first one is, and this is probably not a surprise, content.
Content. All right, so what you're actually saying in the essay?
Yeah, but it's more than just like, touching on the topic. You've got to have a clear opinion.
Okay.
And then back it up with solid reasons.
And when they say solid reasons, what do they actually mean?
They mean you got to go beyond just like, throwing out a word like cheap.
Right.
Or convenient. It's like, okay, it's cheap, but so what? Why does that matter?
Give me the why.
Exactly. They have this example where they say, instead of just saying something's cheaper, you got to explain what being cheaper actually leads to. Like maybe more people can buy it, or maybe it frees up money for other stuff.
Okay, so it's about making those connections, showing that you're really thinking through the implications.
Totally. And then the next area they look at is organization.
Organization.
This is all about how your essay flows, Is it structured logically? Does it make sense? Can the reader follow your train of thought easily?
Makes sense. This is where I guess those transition words come in handy.
Oh, yeah. Those are your best friends. They're like those little signs on the highway, guiding the reader through your argument.
So they don't get lost.
Exactly.
All right, what's next?
Next up is vocabulary. Pretty self-explanatory, right? They want to see that you're using a good range of words.
And appropriate words.
Right, and using them correctly, of course.
So no, just using the same word over and over again.
Yeah, try to mix it up. Find some synonyms, some different ways to say the same thing. Shows you really know your stuff.
Makes your writing more interesting, too.
Definitely. And then, last but not least, we have grammar.
The dreaded grammar.
I know, right? But it's important. They're checking to see if you can use different sentence structures correctly.
So not just subject, verb, object all the time.
Exactly. You got to mix it up. Longer sentences, shorter sentences, questions, exclamations. It all adds to the impact.
Shows you've got a handle on the language. Okay, so those are the things to aim for. Now, what about the big no-nos? The stuff that can really tank your score.
Yeah, let's talk about those landmines. Number 1, and this is a big one, not answering the topic.
Not answering the topic. So like going off on a tangent.
Basically, if your essay doesn't directly address the question they asked, well, you're kind of sunk.
Ouch.
Yeah, they even say you can get you a big fat 0 in all the scoring categories.
Wow, so there's like an instant fail. Do they have an example of that?
Yeah, they say like if the question is about casual clothing in companies, but you just talk about jeans the whole time, you haven't really answered the question. You've just zoomed in on one little part of it.
Right, you got to look at the bigger picture. Okay,
Yes.
What's another trap to watch out for?
Using non-English words without explaining them.
Yeah. Can be tricky.
I see some loan words are okay, like salary man, yeah, especially if you give it some context, like who work for the company.
But like just throwing in random Japanese words without any explanation, that's a no-go.
Exactly. The reader needs to understand what you're saying.
Okay, what else should we avoid?
Contradicting yourself. Your essay needs to have a clear, consistent argument.
So, no flip-flopping.
Right. Like, you can't say you support casual dress because it reduces stress, and then later say suits are better because they look more professional.
You got to pick a lane and stick to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then another thing they point out is not explaining your reasons enough.
Okay, so it's not enough to just list your reasons. You got to go deeper.
Exactly. They give these examples, like casual wear looks less formal,
Okay.
or it makes people feel too relaxed. But why are those things bad? You got to spell it out.
Right, connect the dots for the reader.
Exactly. And then last one on the don't do this list, including irrelevant information.
So basically, stay focused on the topic at hand.
Yeah, don't wander off into random territory.
Keep it tight, keep it relevant. Got it. So all this advice from the Eichen Foundation, it's really about clarity, isn't it? Making sure your argument is clear, your reasons are clear, your writing is clear.
Absolutely. They want to see that you can communicate your thoughts effectively.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the what not to do. Now let's talk about making a real impact, especially right from the start. How can we write an intro that really grabs the reader's attention?
Well, that's where Tora-Chan comes in with some super helpful advice.
Okay, let's hear it.
They've got this list of 10 power verbs that can really elevate your introduction.
Power verbs. I like the sound of that. What are they?
All right, get ready. Argue, assert, contend, emphasize, highlight, illustrate, indicate, pose, raise, and underscore.
Whoa, okay. Lots to unpack there. But I can already see how using those verbs can make your writing sound more authoritative, more confident.
Definitely. It shows you're not just stating facts, you're taking a stance.
So let's break down a few of these. What about argue? How does Tora-Chan define that one?
They say argue means to give reasons for or against something.
Okay, so it's about presenting different sides of an issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they give this example sentence. Some people argue that social media has a negative impact on society.
Right, so starting with argue sets the stage for a discussion, for exploring different perspectives.
Totally. And then there's assert, which is even stronger.
Stronger how?
They say it means to state a fact or belief confidently and forcefully.
Okay, so no messing around with assert.
Nope. It's like, this is what I believe, and I'm going to back it up. The example they give is, this essay will assert the importance of environmental conservation.
Boom, right from the start. You know where they stand.
Exactly. And then there's contend, which is a little different.
How so?
They define it as to assert something as a position in an argument.
Okay, so it's about taking a stance that's part of a larger debate.
Yeah, like maybe it's a controversial topic or there are different schools of thought on it. They give this example. Many experts contend that artificial intelligence will revolutionize our lives.
So starting with contend tells a reader, hey, this is an ongoing conversation and here's where I stand.
Exactly. And then we have emphasize, which is pretty straightforward. To give something special importance.
Okay, so it's about highlighting what you think is really key.
Right. Their example is, it is important to emphasize the role of education in personal development.
So you're telling the reader, pay attention to this. This is crucial.
Exactly. And then there's highlight, which is similar.
Similar, but not exactly the same.
They define it as to give prominence or emphasis to something.
So maybe it's about bringing something specific into focus.
Yeah, maybe it's a detail or an aspect that's often overlooked. Their example is, this report highlights the need for increased funding for public services.
So you're shining a spotlight on something specific.
Exactly. And then we have illustrate, which is all about using examples.
That's always helpful.
Right. It makes things more concrete, more relatable. They define it as to explain or make something clear by using examples, charts, pictures, etc.
So it's not just telling, it's showing.
Exactly. Their example is, the following examples will illustrate the benefits of bilingual education.
Okay, so starting with illustrate tells the reader, get ready for some concrete evidence.
Exactly. And then there's indicate, which is about using data or facts.
Okay, so it's a more evidence-based approach.
They define it as to point out or show something.
Okay.
Their example is, statistics indicate a rise in youth unemployment.
So starting with indicate sets the stage for a more data-driven argument.
Precisely. And then we have pose, which is about asking a question.
Ooh, that's a good way to hook the reader.
Right. It makes them think, okay, what's the answer?
So it's about framing the essay around a central question.
Exactly. They define it as to present or create a problem or question. Their example is, this essay will pose the question of whether technology truly improves our lives.
So you're inviting the reader to explore the question along with you.
Exactly. And then there's raise, which is similar to pose, but maybe a little broader.
Broader in what sense?
They define it as to bring up a subject for discussion or consideration.
Okay, so it's about introducing a topic that needs further examination.
Exactly. Their example is, the article raises concerns about the effects of climate change.
So you're flagging an important issue right from the start.
Exactly. And then finally, we have underscore, which is all about emphasizing importance.
So kind of like emphasize and highlight.
Yeah, they're all in the same family. They define it as to emphasize or give special attention to something. Their example is, it is necessary to underscore the significance of international cooperation.
So it's about hammering home a key point.
Exactly. And you're doing it right from the start, setting the tone for the whole essay.
Wow, this list is amazing. It really shows how much thought goes into crafting a strong introduction.
Right. It's not just about summarizing the topic. It's about making a statement, taking a stance, and setting the stage for what's to come.
And if we think about the Eichen scoring criteria, Using these power verbs really helps with those first two areas, content and organization.
Absolutely. By clearly stating your opinion or the direction of your argument with a power verb, you're directly addressing the content aspect.
And by signaling the scope and purpose of your essay, you're setting yourself up for good organization.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like if you start with illustrate, the reader knows to expect examples. If you start with pose, they know you're going to explore a specific question.
So it's all about giving the reader a roadmap, making your essay clear and easy to follow.
Exactly. And that's what good writing is all about.
So to wrap things up, let's remember those key takeaways for writing a killer essay, especially for something like the Eichen test. Answer the question directly, back up your points with solid reasons, organize your thoughts logically, use a variety of vocabulary, and watch out for those common grammar mistakes.
And don't forget about those power verbs in your introduction.
Right, those are your secret weapons. They can really make your essay stand out and show that you've got a strong command of the language.
Exactly. It's all about expressing yourself clearly, confidently, and persuasively.
So next time you sit down to write, whether it's for the Eichen or anything else, think about those principles we talked about today. And remember, good writing is a skill you can develop. The more you practice, the better you'll get.
Absolutely. And who knows, you might even start to enjoy it.
Maybe even have a little fun with it. All right, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into essay writing. We hope you learned some valuable tips today.
And good luck with all your future writing endeavors.
Until next time.
See you then.